BMW builds commuter cars, sedans, SUVs, cars meant to be leased, driven gently and forgotten. So when they sat down to design the B58, logic said, build it just strong enough. Build it to survive a warranty period, nothing more. But that's not what they did. They built a weapon. Start with the block, closed-deck aluminum. The kind of architecture you'd expect in a racing engine, not a 3 Series. The cylinder walls aren't traditional iron liners. They're coated. A thin, hardened surface bonded directly to the aluminum. Lighter, stronger, more thermally stable. Inside, the rotating assembly is built like it's hiding a secret. 3 liters exactly, 82mm bore. 94, 6mm stroke, compression bumped to 11. 0 to 1, up from the N55's 10. 2, sharper, more aggressive, feeding it all, a single twin-scroll turbocharger. Not sequential, not parallel. One precise fast-spooling unit, and in stock form, this entire arsenal is asked to produce, in its base trim, 286 horsepower. A number the engine treats as an idol. Here's the thing. BMW is one of the most cost-obsessed manufacturers on Earth. Every gram of metal is justified by an accountant. So why over-engineer a commuter motor this far beyond its rated output? Because they knew tuners would find it. They knew the M division would lean on it. They knew this architecture had to scale. And the moment the aftermarket realized what BMW had quietly handed them, the game changed. So where does that journey actually start? So you've got the most overbuilt straight six of the modern era sitting in a commuter sedan. The question becomes obvious. How much does it actually take to wake it up? Start with stage 1. A laptop, a cable, and a flash. MHD or BM3, these are the 2 platforms that own this engine. Load a map, bolt on an aftermarket intake, add a catless downpipe to free the factory twin-scroll turbo. That's it. No internals, no fuel system. Stock everything underneath. The gain is enormous. We're talking a different car. Throttle response sharpens, mid-range torque arrives like a freight train, and the factory hardware doesn't even flinch. But stage 1 is just the doorway. Here's where it gets interesting. Stage 2 is where the B58 starts embarrassing engines twice its price. The factory turbo becomes the bottleneck, so you don't upgrade it, you replace the fuel. MHD's Flex Fuel Kit. $490. That single box unlocks E85. Then you supplement the direct injection with a port injection kit. Why? Because at high boost on ethanol, the factory DI alone can't flow enough fuel. Port injection picks up where DI runs out. Together, they feed everything the engine can swallow. A bigger downpipe, an upgraded intercooler, a retune for E85, still no pistons, still no rods, still no teardown. So where do you go when the factory turbo finally taps out? So stage 2 gets you halfway there. But the real number people want is 800. 800 wheel horsepower from a factory commuter engine. Here's where most builders panic. They start pricing forged pistons, forged rods, a full teardown, a machine shop bill that runs 5 figures before a single bolt is torqued. Stop. You don't need any of it. The B58's stock bottom end, that closed deck block, that factory crank, the stock rods and stock pistons, handles 800 wheel horsepower with no real risk. Not theoretically, in practice. A 340i running a pure 800 turbo, stock engine, stock transmission, with a DO88 intake manifold and E85, laid down 744 horsepower and 683 pound-feet at the wheels. Untouched internals, and cars have gone past 1,000 on the same bottom end and lived. So what does 800 actually take? A big single turbo, port injection bolted on top of the factory direct injection, E85, the supporting bolt-ons, fueling, intake, downpipe, and a tune dialed in on MHD or BM3. That's it, all in. $5,000 to $10,000, not 20, not 30. The same money people spend on wheels, for 800 wheel horsepower, from a warranty-era BMW. Forged internals are overkill on a street car at this level. The engine simply doesn't need them. So where do you go from here? Past 800, the engine keeps pulling. But the rest of the car, it doesn't. So the engine will take it. Stock crank, stock rods, stock pistons, closed deck block, coated bores, 11, 0.1 compression. People have pushed internally stock B58s past 1,000 wheel horsepower and driven home. The motor isn't the problem, the car is. Start with the gearbox. The ZF 8 HP 50 behind the B58 in the F30 is rated to roughly 368 pound-feet from the factory. It's arguably the best automatic ever built. Smooth, quick, bulletproof at stock torque. But you're about to ask it to hold nearly double that. Valve bodies cook. Clutch packs glaze. Software starts protecting itself by pulling torque before you ever see the limiter. Then the driveline, the drive shaft, the rear diff, the half shafts. None of it was spec'd for an 800 horsepower launch. Things twist, things snap, usually at the worst possible moment. Fueling is next. Factory direct injection runs out of headroom. That's why port injection exists on these builds. Push past it, and even the auxiliary rail starts begging. And then heat. E85 helps. The factory cooling stack doesn't. Intercooler heat soak. Oil temps climbing on the second pull, trans fluid cooking on the third. The engine is grinning. The car is dying around it. So where do you go from here? You stop asking what the B58 can survive, and you start asking what it actually is. Because to understand why this motor is special, you have to compare it to the one everyone still worships. So the question always comes. The one every inline-six conversation eventually circles back to. What about the 2JZ? The Toyota legend, the engine that built the tuning scene, cast iron block, closed deck, famous for swallowing boost, and for 30 years the benchmark. But here's the thing, the 2JZ GTE left production in 2002. The world it was built for no longer exists. Stricter emissions, tighter fuel maps, direct injection, variable geometry cooling. The 2JZ can't meet any of it without major surgery. The B58 does it from the factory, and does it while making 286 horsepower in its softest tune. Stock for stock, the B58 makes more power, burns cleaner, weighs less, and responds sharper thanks to that 11, 0 to 1 compression. Then there's the money. A built 2JZ to 800 horsepower means sourcing a decades-old engine, machining it, forging it, fueling it, and tuning it from scratch. A B58 gets there on stock internals. With bolt-ons, for a fraction of the cost. The 2JZ earned its legend honestly. Nobody's taking that away. But legends are frozen in time. Engineering moves forward. The B58 is what happens when a company with infinite resources looks at the 2JZ blueprint and asks what 30 more years of metallurgy, casting, and combustion science can do. The answer is sitting in a 3i40i at your local dealer. Overbuilt, underrated, and quietly the best inline-six ever made.